All right. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Liz Schaller. I am the NIMAC manager, and co-presenting with me today is Nicole Gaines, our project director. And we're really excited to have you all here. Hopefully, it looks like I see some returning folks and maybe one or two folks who are new to the NIMAC. So hopefully, we are gonna provide a really brief overview, but a lot of what we'll talk about today are updates, things that we have on the horizon coming up this year. So we're so glad that you were able to make time to join us this afternoon. Can you go to the next slide, Nicole? All right. So to get us started and get to know each other a little better, if you could put in the chat your name and then the state you're from or your agency, and then a highlight from your summer, something that you did this summer that you really enjoyed. Mine was that I visited Mammoth Cave, which is not very far from Louisville, Kentucky, which is where we're located at the Printing House for the Blind. But if you've never been before, it is really spectacular, and it is also a really, really great place to go in the middle of July because it feels excellent. So, if you have a cave close to you, I highly recommend that as a summer destination. Ooh, a family trip to New York City. Was it fun or stressful or maybe a combination of the two? I love New York, but it can be a lot. There's a lot to do. You can find yourself running around. Okay, someone went on a Disney cruise to Alaska. Wow, I've never been to Alaska before. That sounds amazing. Actually, I think we have one of our authorized users from Alaska on the call today. Oh my gosh. Wow, Misha, that's impressive. Myrtle Beach. Ooh, a lot of people went to the beach. That's fun. That sounds really nice. Oh, Scott, you went to the beach too. Fun. Oh yeah, I want to see the Northern Lights too, Liz. Oh, Lake Tahoe. I was there once very briefly. It's so beautiful. Wow, everyone got outdoors. That's great. It's rejuvenating, really. Well, good. Okay. Well, thank you all so much, and glad you're here with us this afternoon. We can go ahead and hop into to the agenda. So today, like I said, I'll start with kind of a really quick refresher for anyone that is new or maybe hasn't been to a training in a while, just some quick, like where we are today with stats, etc. And then Nicole's gonna take over and talk about some accessible format production timeline information and some updates about eBraille, as well as talking a little bit about NIMAC and procurement, which is a really important topic for technical assistance for the NIMAC. And then I will talk about some of our upcoming training opportunities. And then at that point, we want some input from you all, talking about both technical assistance as well as our NIMAC case study. We shared a little bit about this before, but Scott from True North is here this afternoon, and he'll talk a little more about where we are today, give a little update, and share a survey with you. So with that, we can jump in to our content. Okay, so this infographic does a nice job of sort of showing the flow of how NIMAC supports students from the point of a state or district requiring NIMAS in a textbook contract, that really, really important first step that Nicole's going to talk a little bit more about later, all the way to the accessible formats being distributed to qualifying students. So when your state or district requires NIMAC in a textbook adoption contract, that requires the publisher to send us NIMAC files so that they are available when the need for an accessible format is identified. Our small team here at the NIMAC reviews all of our files and certifies them, and then makes them available to you all, to the authorized users in our states and territories, to either download yourselves or to assign to accessible media producers. Then, of course, those files can be used to produce Braille, large print, accessible digital formats, and then those formats can be distributed to students in the classroom. We have been in operation since December of 2006, which is a long time. And currently, the repository contains over 84,000 files from more than 200 educational publishers. Since we've launched, over 450 NIMAC users have downloaded more than 58,000 source files to use in the first time production of one or more accessible formats. That's something that's very important about the NIMAC is the NIMAC file is only needed for the first time production of the format. Once that format is produced, it can be distributed to any other eligible students that require it. And we're happy to say that so far in 2025, NIMAC users have downloaded over 2,500 files. So we do know that print instructional materials are still being used in the classroom, and NIMAC files are still being utilized to produce those accessible formats. So IDEA does not require that states work with the NIMAC, but all 50 states, the 6 eligible territories, and the Department of Defense all have chosen to do so. States and districts that coordinate are legally obligated to do a couple of things. They're required to require NIMAC from publishers as part of their procurement processes, as well as abide by the eligibility requirements of IDEA for those accessible formats and copyright law in the use of NIMAC files. States that coordinate with the NIMAC are required to name a NIMAC state coordinator as well, and then that person designates and manages the authorized users for their state. The NIMAC receives quite a wide range of student-facing materials that are published primarily for use in primary and secondary education. I would say the biggest category of materials that we don't receive that we get requests for are trade books. We do receive some trade books that are packaged in a reading curriculum and tied to that reading curriculum. But other than that, we do not receive NIMAC for trade books. While the NIMAC can accept NIMAC for some digital instructional materials, we do want to note that materials that meet that WCAG 2.0 AA benchmark for accessibility are exempt from NIMAC requirements. Ideally, of course, digital instructional materials should be required to meet accessibility guidelines out of the box. And hopefully, under the new ADA Title II regs, all SEAs and LEAs are currently working to incorporate accessibility requirements as part of digital materials procurement. And I will share a link for you in the chat, an ADA Title II requirements roadmap that might be handy if you haven't had a chance to take a look at it yet. All right. And with that, I'll hand it over to Nicole and she'll talk a little bit more about accessible format production and eBraille.
Thanks, Liz. Before we move on, are there any questions about kind of that really quick overview that anybody has? Feel free to ask any questions that you might have on anything we've covered so far. Okay, it looks like there aren't any questions. So the next thing that we'd like to do is just talk a little bit about a couple of different timelines. This can be a helpful reminder if you're a more experienced authorized user, and it's also just really important to kind of understand if you are newer to NIMAS and the whole uh, ecosystem of getting accessible formats produced into students. On the NIMAS side of things, as Liz mentioned, ideally, NIMAS is produced as a part of an instructional materials adoption contract or purchase agreement. And the important thing to remember here is that it is a separate post-production step for publishers. NIMAS, the beauty of NIMAS is that it is a single source file format that can be used to create a range of accessible formats. But the flip side of that is it is not a format that publishers have on hand. It's not automatically produced either as a part of print book production or even ebook production. What this means is that when a publisher has a requirement or a request to produce NIMAS, it can take anywhere from a week to as many as 2 or 3 months for that file to be delivered to the NIMAC. Generally speaking, because NIMAS isn't a format that publishers have expertise in creating, this process is almost universally outsourced to digital conversion vendors. And so part of that timeline for production is going to have to do with the complexity of the material. Is the publisher providing alt text? Are they providing MathML? Is it a large textbook or is it a relatively small, modular social studies book? So that has an impact as well. And then also there's just whatever is in the pipeline already for that conversion vendor and whatever timeline is worked out with the publisher. So, um, in terms of the day-to-day operation of the NIMAC fields, we actually field hundreds of requests each year for files that have not yet been received. We're happy to field those requests. Publishers are also almost always willing to help if they're able to produce an IMAS file for material that is needed. But because that introduces a delay, it's really not optimal. It's not really what we want to see. On the accessible format production side, this also can vary quite a bit. The most important factor that's usually involved with that is what accessible format is required by the student. When it comes to digital formats such as EPUB, DAISY, or even an MP3, those kinds of formats are very quickly produced from NIMAS, and they could be delivered within days or even more quickly than that. If you happen to have a local program that is providing those, they might even be able to occasionally get you those files the same day. Large print, that's kind of the intermediate one. A first-time hard copy print order for APH, for example, usually requires 8 to 12 weeks, but a reprint is only going to take about 3 to 4 weeks. And some of that, again, is just the actual hard copy production time and then the shipping time. I can't really speak to other providers. There may be other providers that are out there who keep inventory on hand for accessible books. APH does not. So pretty much, I mean, there could be an occasional exception where we've had a return or something like that, but generally we don't have an enormous Costco-sized warehouse full of braille or large print, and so that is just something that has to be factored in to that timeline. When it comes to Braille, this is generally the most challenging format to produce. And the main reason for that is tactile graphics. Tactile graphics still require a lot of time to create and then also to emboss and get into the hard copy books. So generally speaking, for example, a first-time APH Braille order usually requires 70 to 90 days for either the delivery of the entire book if it's a really small book, or for the first 5 or so volumes of a larger book. And then APH will continue to deliver like on a roughly monthly basis the remainder of the volumes. So this is just something else to keep in mind in terms of what you would actually be looking at. I know that from the APH standpoint, for example, there's always a really big push early in the spring for teachers to be looking at what materials are students going to need the following fall and to try to the extent possible to get those Braille orders in. The next thing that I want to talk a little bit about is just a new format that you may have heard about already and that we're very excited about at the NIMAC, and that format is called eBraille. Um, Basically, eBraille is a new technical specification. If you're familiar with EPUB, it's really basically EPUB. It's HTML and with a CSS. And the whole reason that there's a need for a new Braille format is that we are looking to a new generation of multi-line refreshable Braille devices. One of those is the Monarch. APH is really pleased to have launched that new product. But we expect that there will be many, many more that will be coming with using different technologies, different types of Braille pens and so forth. But what we really needed is a digital format that could provide both well formatted and accurate Unicode Braille. We're using Unicode Braille rather than ASCII in this format. And then also to be able to integrate digital graphics within that same file so that the student could be reading, go to the graphic, go back to the text. And so if you are a Braille producer, or if you're familiar with Braille production, the way that Braille software works currently and what a Braille Ready file does is a Braille Ready file cannot support any image content. It is only the dots, right? And so that just with that limitation, it's not something that could be built out. We had to kind of start with a new format. In terms of the eBraille format, APH has been very invested and very involved in it. It is actually an international specification that has been happening under the auspices not only of APH, but the International DAISY Consortium. And so we're very excited that there's a lot of international support for this specification as well. The other thing that the NIMAC has been very directly involved in is supporting NIMAS to eBraille conversion, especially as regards free open source translation tools. So we are looking forward this fall to actually having some software available for folks. The timeline has been a little slower than we might have hoped. If you are a Duxbury user, Duxbury has been working very diligently to build the eBraille support. They hope to have that into their software at some point this fall, possibly. And then we're also been working with Braille Blaster that we also hope that kind of on a similar timeline that will be available as well. APH, it's as soon as we are ready. The Monarch is, we're still working on an eBraille reader in the Monarch, but we're hoping for that to be available sometime in October, possibly by mid-October. And at that point, we will actually be piloting the eBraille format with students in some selected schools. So we're really anxious to see what the feedback is and the experiences that students have with the format. Um, the other couple tools that I want to just let folks know about is that the DAISY pipeline, that is a free conversion tool. It can already be used to generate eBraille from NIMAS. It's very exciting. We've done some testing ourselves on it. But the caveat there is that it cannot really do anything to support tactile graphics or inserting tactile graphics into the format. However, if you just need a quick on-the-fly eBraille file from NIMAS without the graphic content, it seems to work great. We've been really happy with it. And then the final thing that I wanted to let people know about, there are a lot of folks in the field who have a back catalog of BRF and PDFs for hard copy graphics. And one of the things that has been really important for APH is to make sure that we can leverage all of that content that we already have out there for use with folks who have this new generation of multi-line display. And the way that that's happening is that we will be releasing a free BRF to eBraille tool to the field probably early next year. We're kind of field testing it with a smaller group of folks right now. But if you're interested in this, if this is something that you'd like to check out, please feel free to reach out to me and I'd be happy to put you in touch with somebody who can make that possible. So the next thing, before I hand it back off to Liz to talk a little bit about upcoming training and some of our other technical assistance efforts, is I did want to take a moment to just highlight again the critical importance of instructional materials procurement and the whole NIMAS ecosystem.
Nicole,
Yes.
I'm so sorry. There's one eBraille question in the chat, and I feel like it might be good to
Oh,
cover it before we
yeah,
move on to
yeah.
this.
No,
Um,
absolutely, please.
yeah, so Liz Anderson asks, for the DAISY pipeline, I'm assuming the quality of the eBraille is dependent on the quality of the NIMAS file that is used.
You know, I mean, I'm not sure specifically like what quality issues you would be thinking would come into play. I mean, I think in general that the answer would just be yes, more generally, if you have a NIMAS file that has issues, then you're probably going to have some kind of issue with the format that's produced. Currently, again, because we don't have an eBraille reader, we haven't really been able to field test the format, and we don't have a mechanism yet to really test any of these files. But you're pointing to something that's really important, and that is that as we really start getting eBraille, whether it's the back converted or the NIMAS to eBraille, as soon as we have a mechanism to have that and have a reader where we can evaluate the quality, that's going to be a huge thing for us to do in terms of getting that feedback. So yeah. Did you have a more specific question on that? Be happy to go further into anything that I can help with if there's
Yeah,
a different piece of that.
so I was just thinking of how we know that Braille has to be formatted a certain way, right? And so that's got to come from the NIMAS file, right? So at least in my understanding of how this whole eBraille thing works, is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, well, and what we would actually hope, and this is getting a little bit into the weeds, but I would actually hope that the conversion from NIMAS to to eBraille will actually be much more accurate and easier than it is for to create a BRF. And the reason for that is that generally speaking, there's much more overlap in terms of taking those tags that are in NIMAS and creating analogous tags in EPUB. It's a much more direct translation than it is with BRF, So, and then in terms of the way that the formatting happens, in terms of like paragraphs and lists and that kind of thing, you're right. It's working with those tags, but because it can more directly use those tags, I actually think it's going to be a more positive experience. We'll be waiting to see, but I think it'll actually make the translation quicker, and that the immediate translation will be uh, just we hope it's really good quality. On the Braille side, we are very confident that the Unicode Braille that will be that will not be a challenge, that will be that the Braille itself that will be good quality, great quality. So yeah, do you know of any folks in Florida who are a part of the Monarch Student Pilot Project by any chance?
Um, there might be one. I would need to double check. We do have a monarch ourselves at our center. If we could,
Great. Well,
yeah.
I tell you what, if you have an interest, maybe we can get together offline because if you are interested in, for example, in using that BRF to eBraille tool and with your
Mhm.
own any content that you may have doing your own testing, we really are very anxious to see what feedback we get from those pilot students. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, yeah, we'll definitely be happy to participate however we can.
Great,
For
great.
sure.
Well,
Yes.
happy to hear that. Let's connect. We'll connect
Okay.
offline for that.
Thank you.
Super. Great. Well, any other questions before we move on? Okay. Well, circling back to the question of procurement, again, what's really essential about the NIMAC and NIMAS is that it's really meant to be a proactive strategy. We really want to have the files already available when a need comes in to produce that Braille or large print or DAISY or whatever format is needed. And so the reason, in terms of the way that the legislation is set up, the whole idea behind putting it in the hands of the states and districts was, I think, I mean, this might be putting words into Congress's mouth a little bit, but the idea was, we're not going to tell states and districts the material that they should have added to this repository. They're going to be the ones who know, so they're going to be the ones who require it. Now the caveat there is that is the only mechanism to require NIMAS, and occasionally we still get questions from folks who are like, aren't publishers required to put all of their stuff in the NIMAC? And the answer is a resolute no. They are required to put materials into the NIMAC that are required by states and districts in those contracts. So the reason that I'm making this pitch, this kind of it ties into a little bit more of what Scott's going to talk about in a few minutes with the case study. But it's also a really important focus for us in technical assistance more generally to try to ensure that states and districts know about this requirement, know how important it is to the NIMAC and to the timely delivery of materials, right? So that's why I wanted to just kind of bring that up. It does continue to be a challenge in terms of the implementation of AIM systems. And so we just kind of like to have the reminder that if a state or a district is coordinating with the NIMAC, if they are indicating yes, I am coordinating, and those assurances that go to the SEA every year, a part of the legal requirement under IDEA, it's not optional. It's actually there in the law that those procurement instruments must require NIMAS, that NIMAS requirement needs to be in there. So if you in your role have any kind of procurement adjacent responsibilities, or even if you just have contacts that we could work through, we're always looking for opportunities to support states and districts and to help get the word out. So if you have any thoughts about that, how we can support your state, we would just love to hear from you on that. I'd also, just as a final note, say that technical assistance for NIMAS implementation historically kind of fell to other technical assistance centers, but increasingly the NIMAC is kind of stepping into that role. And so we're interested in any ideas that you have that can help in that area. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Liz to talk a little bit about upcoming trainings and some other resources.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. So I did want to highlight really quickly what we have coming up here. I'll put these links in the chat. We do host quarterly virtual user group meetings for users of Braille 2000 and users of Duxbury, and both of our fall meetings are coming up here in September. So those registration links are in the chat. Feel free to share with your teams. Those are really great opportunities. We host these meetings, but they are led by experienced transcribers, and they're a really good place for people to ask questions of each other and really discuss and learn together. So I've enjoyed, because I've learned a lot. I am not a transcriber, and I've learned quite a bit in those meetings myself. We also have a couple of in-person presentations coming up that I wanted to mention. We will be presenting a session at APH's annual meeting this year on accessible textbook production from start to finish. I'm really excited about it. It's going to highlight APH's production team and all of the work that they do. So if you are attending annual meeting this year, which I hope some of you are, please consider coming to our session on Friday. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And then we also have a session coming up at Getting in Touch with Literacy in November. We'll actually be presenting with our project officer, Rebecca Sheffield, on resources for Braille readers. We'll obviously be talking about the NIMAC, and she'll be talking about other OSEP funded projects, but I think that'll be a great session as well. And then I'm also extremely excited to say that we are going to be hosting our first large print training. Katie Robinson from Okali so graciously agreed to do a two-part training for us, and we are still working on nailing down the dates. Hopefully it will be in November, and we'll send them out as soon as we have them. But she has a process that she's developed over time using Word and macros that she's built. And it's not, it's a little bit complicated. Obviously, we need some time to present it. But I know that a lot of states really need support around large print production. So I'm hoping that that everyone will be able to come and benefit from it, because she's awesome and really good at what she does. So we're really excited for that. All right. And then I also wanted to highlight a couple of helpful resources. If you don't have them already, you may want to take a look at them. One is our NIMAS contract language handout, which is posted on our website. And that's something, if you do, like Nicole mentioned, work with folks at the SEA level who are involved in procurement at all, that's just kind of a quick one-pager that you can give them that explains more about NIMAS contract language and even provides sample language that they can include in their contracts. So it's really easy to use. And then we also have a NIMAS and NIMAC collaborative publication that we did with Academy that is pretty thorough and really goes into everything that SEAs and LEAs need to know about NIMAS and NIMAC. So definitely give that a look too if you haven't already. And then finally, Nicole has mentioned this previously, but the NIMAC really is taking on a larger role in technical assistance, and we are interested in knowing what would be helpful for you. We do collect this information during surveys, and that, for instance, is why we're having our large print training this year. It's in response to a need that has been identified by our users. But if there's anything specific to your state or agency that would be really helpful, whether that's a written resource, some slides that we can contribute to your presentation, or a presentation we develop for you or your team, we're happy to do that. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you ever have a request like that. I know we're working on one right now for Wyoming that we're going to do for them later this year for folks at their School for the Blind. And we're always happy to do trainings like that. If you do have a need, just let us know. And with that, I do want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about our case study today. I'm so happy again to have Scott here. True North is leading our case study on timely delivery of accessible formats, and he's going to kind of get you up to speed with where we're at on it. I will say from the NIMAC perspective, the purpose of this is twofold. We want to learn what are things that we can do maybe that are related to the NIMAC system, that maybe are related to software or other kind of mechanics of accessible format production that could be improved. Similar to, how we held our NIMAS convening in 2024 and looked for feedback on the specification itself. So we're interested in those things. And then we're also interested in the practices that support timely delivery, including those procurement contracts and related technical assistance. So with that, I'll hand it over to Scott and he can talk a little bit more about what they've been up to.
Thanks so much. Yes, as Liz mentioned, I am Scott Seitz with True North Evaluation. And we are partnering with the NIMAC, as Liz noted, on a case study, looking really at the benefits of and practices that support timely delivery of accessible formats. So we have 3 states who are participating in a deeper data collection dive, we'll say. And those 3 states are Ohio, Oregon, and Utah. Each of those states and key stakeholders within each state are distributing a survey. And we are also in the process of conducting a number of interviews and focus groups to try to better understand these case study questions that we are exploring. Even if you are not in one of those 3 case study states, you can still help us out. So if we go to the next slide, thank you for that. We have a survey that is designed to gather insights, information related to our case study questions. And this survey is for anyone across the US who is connected in some way. So we have designed this survey so that people in various roles can take it. So this includes those at the SEA and LEA level, teachers, teachers, school leaders or administrators, instructional resource center staff, accessible media producers, publishers, vendors, etc. If you scan that QR code, you will be able to go right to the survey. You can also just click the link. And I don't know if Liz or Nicole, you're able to add that link to the chat, but if so, that would be great. Oh, yes, there, thank you. If you are in one of those 3 case study states, Oregon, Utah, and Ohio, you have a specific link for your state. So please use that specific state link. But otherwise, everyone else, we would love for you to take this survey, as well as to share it freely with your colleagues, teams that you're on, other projects. We really are hoping to get as much information as possible, even outside of the three main states. And this leads me to one question that I'll ask you all. And if you have thoughts, I would love to hear them from you right now. You can come off mute or put them in the chat. You can also email me if you have thoughts about this question. And that is, are there ways that we can distribute this survey? So other avenues to distribute the survey widely, trying to get input from a variety of different stakeholders. Does anyone just off the top of their head have any thoughts right now? And I'll repeat the question just to make sure I'm clear. But if there's any suggestions for how we could distribute this survey widely to various stakeholders, really across the United States.
A few examples of things we're already doing within the national survey. Well, Bookshare is going to distribute it, which helps us to get at our, a different population of students with print disabilities. The survey has gone out in the APH newsletter, and then of course we're going to send it out as well to all users. So look for that email probably next week. But yeah, any other suggestions you have, especially state specific suggestions would be great.
This is Liz in Florida. I don't know if have you guys, and I'm sorry if you've done this and I'm just not remembering, but having the EOTs, because I think a lot of us have lists of who is in our state to
We
send.
haven't we haven't asked the EOTs to distribute it specifically, but I think that is a great idea. I see Nicole writing right now.
Okay.
Thank
And
you,
then I
Liz.
would
Yes.
just, I feel like social media is still a place, like there's all those groups out there. I don't know if you guys ever do that kind of stuff, but that seems like a way to reach people too.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We don't have our own social media, but of course APH does. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
thought.
Liz, thank you for that. Liz, do you happen to know any specific social media channels? Like, I don't know if there are like big Facebook groups or something like that that are kind of easy go-tos you could just name off the top of your head. If not, that's fine too, because there's channels like APH's social media. But yeah, any other specific ideas there?
I mean, I can't tell you what they're called off the Tiffany, I think is on here too, but there are, I know they're just like TBI groups, big, like, teachers of students with visual impairments or
This is
whatever different types of names they might be using.
Peter Tusick. Sorry, Liz. I would say AER. You know,
Mm,
when you look at
mhm.
the AER BVI community, I know they have massive Facebook groups for sure. Again, some states maybe are more or less engaged than others, but I would think that might be a nice, you know, target target group to get at because you do have a lot of admins in there as well. And then to Liz's great point, I can tell you that here in Illinois, I mean, we can reach hundreds of people. Well, we do reach hundreds of people biweekly with newsletters. You know, we are in contact with folks every single day, all across the state. You know, as and serving the 4,200 students we do. So I think the EOTs would be a great piece there as well. But I think from the social media side, I'd say AER. There are some big AER PVI.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off that, Peter, I think AER social media is one way in individual chapters, but AER has email contacts directly too. So like for example, as a chapter, if I wanted to send something to Florida membership, I can contact AER and put in a request to send something that way, but I can also ask them to send something to all AER membership via email. And so that's maybe another avenue to go, for people who are less social media oriented, more email friendly.
Wonderful. These are exactly the kinds of ideas that we were hoping for. So really appreciate those suggestions. And Susan,
And
I see what you added to the chat as well. Yeah, was someone else gonna jump in?
oh, I just was going to jump in on Susan's comment about the regional centers in Texas. So
Yeah, and I'd also like to say, this is Susan, excuse me. Our outreach department here at TSPVI would be another way into those regional service centers. So if you want to let me know, I can talk to people over there.
Yeah, and I think this is Peter again. And by the way, it's so nice to hear everyone's voices that I've known in many different in a very different capacity over the last few years, many years. But the POSB, some of that POSB network might also be a very good way because I think you're really going from the top down there. If you go to the principals, superintendents, kind of from the schools for the blind, they really would be able to also disseminate. You're going to cross-pollinate a lot, but at least you'll cover your you'll cover your bases. POSB, I would suggest.
Great idea. And
And
yes, the
there's
cross-pollination will happen. Yeah, sorry,
and
Peter.
there's one other. I'm sorry. It's oh geez. I'll keep thinking. I don't want to hold everyone up.
Well, that just reminded me too, in Florida, this is Tiffany in Florida again. In Florida, there's like an organization for instructional materials, like the departments within the state. And so they might be somewhere that we would be interested in sharing this survey to. So those are all the folks within different districts throughout the state who are responsible for those procurement contracts and ordering instruction materials throughout the state. I think an organization like that, if that exists in other places, might be helpful to share this with too.
Great point. Thank you. And I was just gonna comment on Peter, your um, note that some cross-pollination will happen, and we're okay with that because we know that oftentimes it takes more than one outreach effort to have people complete a survey. So love these different ideas, even if there will be some cross-pollination, if you will. All right. Well, thank you all again. My email, Scott at True North Evaluation, is in the chat. So if other ideas do come to mind, would love to hear them. Feel free to email me. And I believe I'll pass it back over to Liz or Nicole to close us out.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott. I also put the NIMAC email in the chat and our number as well if you just want to call us. We love a phone call also, especially if you want to talk through a technical assistance question that you might have or idea, or if you have some more thoughts about the case study and we can pass them along to True North either way. But thank you all so much for being here this afternoon. Look out for that survey link. And of course, I'll also be distributing the link to this recording as well. So if you had colleagues who weren't able to make it today, you are more than welcome to send that over to them. And as soon as I get that large print training scheduled, I will be sending that link out. Don't you worry. So you'll see it shortly. Thanks again, and have a good rest of your day.
yeah, thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.